Okay, before I get into this video, I want to do a thank you to my patrons over at Patreon. It's your contributions that are making this video possible. Thank you. Now, I have another piece of ordnance here from history. I have a Soviet, later Russian, TM62P3 anti-tank mine with the correct fuse, the MVP62 pneumatic fuse. Now, a reminder, these are trainers. These are not live mines, live fuses. So it's not illegal to own the trainers, but it is illegal to own a live anti-tank mine with or without the fuse if it's not time of war. Keep that in mind. Now, this mine is the last or the latest evolution of the P series in the TM62 landmine series. The main landmine from the TM62 series is the TM62M or TM62 Mike. I already did a video on that a few months back. Now, when they created that mine series, they looked to how they could speed up production in time of war. So there's different mines in that series. Most of them are just theoretical. They're on paper. This version, though, was actually produced and is in the inventory of the Russian Army and others of the former Warsaw Pact. They do have a tendency to also appear in the Rent-a-Revolution Army around the world. There is very, very little metal inside the mine or the fuse itself. The only metal is a spring inside the fuse. That's all. Now you can see up here, the top of the mine is the markings. We have Cyrillic character, which tells us this is a trainer. TM62, Cyrillic character for P. The Model 3. Below that is the date of manufacture and what looks like a stamp for the factory that produced this. These markings are typically not visible. They're just a stamp in there. I took a marker to try to darken them as best I could, so that hopefully you can see them. On the top of the fuse here, same thing, the character for training, MVP in Cyrillic, 62 for the 62 mine series, date of manufacture, and factory symbol. White stripe also denotes that it's a trainer. Now, some characteristics on the mine itself. It is 16 to 17 pounds, of which at least 14 pounds is the explosive filler. The filler on these mines is meant to be TNT. These were simply designed by the Soviets, as I said, for emergency wartime production. The thoughts were is that any plastic injection molding plant could crank these out in huge numbers. All they would have to do is make the plastic casings. Molten TNT would be put inside. Bakelite fuse wall would be installed. They'd be crated, shipped out, and somewhere along the line they'd meet up with the Bakelite fuses or plastic fuses coming from another facility. This mine has no secondary fuse wells for an anti-handling device. Not on the bottom, not on the sides, none. This mine can be booby-trapped though, and is meant to be booby-trapped with the MS3 booby-trap device, which looks like exactly like a PMN1 anti-personnel mine. Now there is a carrying strap on the mine here, which is supposed to be removed when this mine is in place. This is just meant for you to take the mine out of the crate, take it to the location where it's going to be fused, and then you take the strap off. Now the MVP62 fuse, this is a pneumatic fuse. Once it's activated, it has a delay time of between 20 to 300 seconds. That's the time that it takes, in theory, for the striker or for the detonator to move into position so that it can set off the booster charge to detonate the mine. These mines were designed to be either hand emplaced or mechanically emplaced. There is a note in Russian literature, which I had to do some translations on, which wasn't the easiest. These are not meant to be emplaced with tracked mine layers like the GMZ mine layer, but they can be laid from wheeled mine layers, trucks, or trailers, and they can also be delivered using helicopter mine laying systems or mine chutes. The temperature operation for these mines is negative 40 degrees Celsius to positive 40 degrees Celsius, or negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit to over 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Remember, it's plastic. The mine casing on this is made of polyethylene. This plastic is more resistant to frost and freezing. For those of you that do not live in the Great White North, plastics during winter get brittle, decay, and start falling apart. The plastic used in this mine is supposed to be more resistant to that, but there is a note that even if the plastic on the casing does crack, does degrade, as long as the explosive inside is not degrading, the mine can still be used. There is a version of the TM62 mine series where it is just pressed explosive with no casing and a fuse attached to it, so I can understand the idea in the doctrine concerning that. Now, to emplace this mine, these mines come 4 to a crate. Sometimes there will be fuses in the crate, sometimes there won't. It depends as to when the mine was manufactured and the factory. You get to the mine dump. You open up the crate. You remove the mines that you need and uncrate the fuses that you need. This mine will take any of the fuses that can be used in the TM62 mine series, but is meant for the MVP62 fuse. Take it out, inspect the mine, make sure the casing is not too messed up. If the casing is messed up, if it's cracked, has a piece missing, check the explosives. If the explosive itself is not degraded, you're supposed to be able to use the mine. Remember, this has a TNT filler, and over time, TNT separates. It starts to leach out pure nitroglycerin. So if you have an oily looking substance leaking from a crack on the mine anywhere, do not use it, and I would be extremely careful, because that's pure nitroglycerin coming out of the mine, which is extremely pressure sensitive. After you check the exterior casing, you're going to check the fuse well. Remove the cap, look inside, check to see that the bakelite's not messed up, the threads aren't messed up, and it has the gasket. These mines can be used in water. You can put these in river crossings, you can put these in swamps. There is a note in Russian literature that this is not designed to be used on sea coasts. The reason for that is the weight is not enough for the mine to stay in the ground from the tidal action. It will pull it out of the ground unless it is anchored. We've checked the mine, everything's good to go. Now we go through and we check the fuse. Make sure it's not cracked. This is a pneumatic fuse. This pushes out air to activate itself. Make sure there's no cracks, no holes, big chunks missing. Make sure the threads are still okay going all the way around. Make sure you still got the cap on the bottom and that it's seated on nice and tight. There is a rubber gasket underneath this which comes into play later. Now when you're ready to use the mine, either at the mine dump or at the place where the mine's going to go in, we're putting it in the road. So we took it up to the road. Everything was already inspected. First, lay the mine on the ground. Move it back and forth a little. Make yourself a mark on the ground as to how large of a hole you need. Take the mine, set it to the side, use your entrenching tool or shovel, dig a hole for the mine. According to Russian doctrine, it's supposed to be straight up and down, at least around the edges of the mine itself. How deep is the hole should be? You want it to be up to about here. You want the fuse, the top of the fuse, to be right below the surface of the dirt. We got our hole dug, and the dirt gets put into a sandbag, taken to another location, and disposed of. We then prep the mine, remove the cap, set it to the side, take our fuse, screw it in, and there's two little nubs on here to help you tighten it into the mine. It actually says in Russian literature you're supposed to make a wrench out of plywood or wood to go over the top of the fuse here with two little cutouts on the edges so that you can basically use it as a wrench to tighten it into place. It also comes in, that piece of wood comes into play later when disarming. Take the carrying strap off, lower the mine into the hole. Backfill the dirt to just around the top of the fuse here. You're then going to remove the safety clip, press in on the two legs, lift up on the safety bail to free the clip, finger, pull it off. Clips and caps get turned into the NCOIC, or the person in charge of the mission, for storage till later for removal of the mine. Next, to arm the mine, you press down on the button. Then backfill dirt over the top, camouflage the area. The mine is in the ground. It is now active. It'll take 20 to 300 seconds for the detonator to move from the storage position, the transport position, to the vertical so that it can set off the booster charge. There is only one piece of metal in this entire mine, and that is a spring inside the fuse. This is a low metallic mine, similar to the U.S. Army's M19, extremely hard to detect. Now for removing this mine. Go through, locate the area where the mine's supposed to be at, get in a prone, start doing your two-finger sweeps till you find the edge of the fuse. Clear out around the fuse, clean off the top of the fuse. Go through, clear off the top of the mine, moving the dirt around the hole. Next, place your hand in here next to the fuse, kind of brace it in as best you can, pushing down on the mine. Go through, start searching around one side, keep going, digging, digging. Remember, you want to check underneath to at least the halfway point. You are checking for the booby traps, like the MS3 booby trap device. You find nothing on one side while you're keeping the hand in place to keep it level. Backfill the dirt, make it stable, backfill around the side here. Change out, pressure down on the other side, same thing, sweep underneath. If it's clear, at that point, you're good to go. Remove the fuse. That's where that piece of wood comes in. You use it to crank it off. And now is going to be the weird part. And I had to confirm this from Russian literature because I only came across one video showing how to do this. Remove the fuse, set it to the side of the hole. Then you'll remove the mine from the hole. When the mine gets removed, they usually use a claw to pull it out just in case there's a booby trap device. Now, we still got our live fuse here. This fuse is a pneumatic fuse. This is not a magnetic fuse. The magnetic fuse in the series is this. And you can see the difference here. This is an MVN 72 magnetic and seismic fuse. This is the pneumatic fuse. The magnetic fuse has a hole in the side where the battery goes, and then the cap goes over the top of that, and then it has arming buttons and clips on top. This has no hole for a battery, just has the arming button. This is a pressure fuse. This pressure fuse takes at least 440 pounds of pressure to crack the plastic and set the fuse off inside. When this was armed, what it does is it pushes the air out to the fuse. Sometimes you'll hear it coming out, just this little blast of air. When that happens, it frees out the pressure inside here, weakening the structure. On the inside of the cap here of the fuse, there's little cuts to weaken it. And those cuts are designed to give under at least 440 pounds of downward pressure, crushing this part of the fuse, setting it off. But now we go through to disarm it, and this is the really, really weird part. I had to confirm this in Russian literature, and it was not easy trying to get it to translate, because trying to get military Russian translated to English it doesn't always translate very well according to Google. Flip the fuse over. You see you got these little marks on here. Unscrew the cap from the bottom of the fuse. Set that to the side. You'll see this little stud here. We're going to be pushing that. Before we do that, we're going to need a Gerber, a knife, or some other tool. Down on the other side here, you see you got this little notch in here. Take our tool, slip it in there, like so. Move it downward. We're trying to move this here. Move this downward, then press on the stud. Until it locks into place. Like so, resetting it. So this gets pushed down, back to here. Then on the side here, you press down on this till the little loop that's around this stud here locks into place on the little stud on this piece. That has now safed the fuse. At this point, flip it over, take your clip, put it back on, put it back into place. Flip it back over, take the cap, and screw it back on. Crank it back down onto the gasket as best you can to seal it up. And that fuse is ready for reusing. There you go. That is what I can find on how to emplace and remove a Russian TM62 Papa 3 anti-tank mine. This is a blast anti-tank mine. It is bulk explosives, so it's designed to go off underneath the track. The strength of these mines, according to the Russian military tests, a single mine can take off anywhere from 3 to 6 track shoes, along with the road arm and everything attached to it underneath the tank. If this would go off underneath a truck, there's not going to be too much left of the truck, at least in that area that drove over the top of the mine. Could this potentially be detonated by someone running over the top? Maybe. It just depends on the condition of the plastic on the fuse, how much that soldier weighs and how much he has on him when he's running. If it does go off with someone running over the top, you're not going to find enough pieces to put in a matchbox to bury. Once again, a reminder, it is illegal to own a live anti-tank mine and a live fuse, or either or here. However, if you are in an invasion situation, such as you're out in the middle of the woods in someplace hypothetical like Ukraine, and your neighboring country has decided to invade your country, and you were left with a stock of anti-tank mines to use against the invader to support the local territorial defense forces, well, maybe you got some of an idea now on how to employ this. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot and militia movements, always remember essays.